of our event. We have 7 weeks, so we're excited. We've got a big lineup for you tonight, and so we're going to be fast-pacing a little bit. I am going to ask when we break for dinner, can we move quickly and get back in, because we've got a lot of information that's going to be shared this evening. Last week, good stuff. How about it? I know. I was thrilled. First of all, I know I sent the email to everybody, but kudos to all of you for bringing the A game. The questions that you asked our panel were spot on. And I think that there were a few things that were discussed that were so appropriate for everyone to hear. So I loved that you took the time to ask the questions, and I hope that you took time to ask more specific questions to who you are in your business when you had some one-on-one time with our panelists. So I will send out their contact information. I realized when I sent the email yesterday that I did not include that. So I will send the panel's contact information when I send the email. Yes? You did? Huh. Can you give me your email address, the two of you, when you leave? Perfect, thank you. Is there anybody else that didn't get an email? That is crazy. Okay. Can you write your email addresses down on something for me, and then I'll make sure I add it? My bad, because you will need to have this week's email. What I will do, if you give me your email right now, I'll just go and forward it to you so that you have it moving forward. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay. We have with us this evening Julie Bratton, who is with Ben Franklin Technology Partners, and she is going to be running through some information on how to deliver an effective pitch, because pitches are due. So if you have any questions on whether or not you're eligible to participate in a pitch, let me know and we can take a look at the sign-in sheet. Remember, the eligibility is that you have to be in attendance at each of the labs in order to be able to participate as a finalist. You can still send a pitch in to be graded if you want. If you want to go through the exercise, that's perfectly fine. It's just that you won't be able to be named as a finalist if you haven't been here for all of the classes. If you have any questions on it, remember, if your name doesn't appear, that's why I'm running around asking people if you've signed in, just to make sure that we have an accurate list so that we can share that with our folks out of Buffalo. Okay. Is Julie in here? I don't have my glasses on, so. Oh, there she is. Okay. Julie, we do need you to use the microphone because I don't know if anybody's on live stream tonight. But Julie is going to run through this deck. Everybody has a copy of her presentation, her decks, her slide deck. There's a place where I think you can take notes as well. But Julie is going to do a great job for us, I know. Thank you so much.
Are you ready? Yep, I'm all good. Yeah. And they gave me one of these.
Oh, you have a lavalier. Yeah. Perfect. Then nobody needs to hear me.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Thanks. Hello, I'm Julie Bratton with Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Ben Franklin Technology is an economic development organization, and we provide business support in the form of connections, resources, business mentoring, advising, and funding and investment. And we work with early-stage tech-based companies and small manufacturers. So I work with companies every day in our portfolio across South Central Pennsylvania, and I'm constantly working with companies to help them build their business, think about how to grow their business, and most often that includes seeking investment, seeking capital or funding. So I get to work with companies every day on how to build a pitch and either prepare them to pitch to Ben Franklin or to other investors. So I hate to use the cliche, but it is a lot like Shark Tank. And most people know what that is, but it is. And I love it. We have so much fun, and it's an interesting business to be in. So I came to Ben Franklin about 5 years ago, and I worked in M&M Mars, the candy company. I have a background in food and beverage. I worked in the industry for 25 years. So I worked for Mars, and thanks, Natalie, for handing out all the Mars candy today. It was very appropriate. And I worked in product development and marketing. I then left Mars, and I did kind of the crazy entrepreneur thing that most of you know what it feels like to go into a startup. And I sold that business after 5 years, and then I started my own consulting business where I continued to consult with small and large businesses on how you build businesses and bring products to market. But no matter what stage or point in my career, I had to learn how to present my ideas, my projects, and my businesses. So what we're going to talk today is a lot about the pointers, the tips that I've compiled over the last couple years, and then kind of going into things that you should consider when you're building a pitch, things that you should avoid, and then hopefully we'll get into a little bit about what should actually be included in your pitch. So let's get started. Are we clicking? All right. Jamal, I don't think I'm moving here. It's got to be turned on. Now we got a green light. I can use this if we have to. Should I go here?
Yeah, just go. That work. You saw me too.
I saw it working, yep. Why isn't this working? Oh, there you go.
There you go. I'll maneuver it for you.
Oh, I got it. I can do it now. Let's see if we got this. All right, I got it. All right, we're working. All right, always test your equipment before every pitch. So rule number 1. All right, no matter what kind of pitch you're making, you have one goal. That is to tell your story to get buy-in. No matter what kind of pitch it is, this is your goal. And the way to achieve it is a killer pitch, right? Now, there are many types of pitches, and for the sake of this presentation, we're going to focus on an investor pitch deck. An investor pitch deck sells your business. If you're writing down any notes, take this note. Make this differentiation. An investor pitch deck sells your business. That is different than a product or a sales deck. A sales deck, a sales pitch, sells your product or services. We're doing and focusing on an investor or an investor pitch deck. You're going to be pitching your business. And why is this important? Because you want to feel like this. Pitching is hard. It is not easy, right? So, it takes practice. And hopefully through programs like this, which is awesome, that they're teaching you how to pitch, and you're getting practice, pitching to large groups, it will become more comfortable. It will become second nature the more that you do it. You have to feel this comfortable. You have to feel confident. So here's what we're going to focus on today. Make your pitches simple, be consistent, and make it well-structured. Now, there's a lot out online. There's a lot of templates. You can Google it, and you can find all kinds of things. Hopefully, they all focus on the same principles, the same fundamentals. So that said, even if you make it well-structured and consistent and simple, you still have one other factor to consider. That's time. On average, investor pitch decks, you'll be given maybe 15 minutes. For this competition, I believe you have 5 minutes for the final pitch. That's 300 seconds, right? You got to be clicking through. You have to tell your story. You got to engage and pull in your investors, your judges, your audience, and keeping them focused and engaged so that you can get buy-in. You have to focus on the 4 C's. And I wish it was diamonds, but it's not. You have to be credible. They got to believe in you. You have to be compelling. You got to be engaging. You got to pull people in. And then, importantly, you got to be clear and concise. 300 seconds. All right. If you think about it, you don't have a lot of time to waste, right? You can't waste it on anything. And we see a lot of things when I'm looking at pitches. We see a lot every day. You don't have any time to waste on mistakes like this. And this was an actual slide that we got. What do you see here? No idea. So much going on. There are mixed matches of fonts and colors, and your eyeballs just don't know where to go. So you have no time for this. What about this one? Okay, this is a pet peeve of mine. When someone says, oh, I got some really good information, I'm sorry, this is an eye chart. Well, guess what? If it was some really good information, you should have taken the time to pull that out and put it in a chart that people can see and understand. Investors or judges or your audience, if they're getting irritated by an eye chart, they're not getting your main message, your main point, and you don't have a lot of time to miss any main messages or main points, right? So avoid these types of things. Here are some of the 5 most common mistakes of pitch behavior. Too much information. I know this business, a lot of it's your baby, it's your hard blood, sweat, and tears, but you want to pack it all into a pitch, you can't. You just can't. Let that go. You have to boil it down to the main messages. Too much information, and you will lose your audience. All right? Second most common mistake, too many slides. Because you think, oh, I'll just pull in a bunch of slides and get all the information in. Here's a tip that I learned early on in my career. Write this one down. It's called the 10-10-10 rule. 10 slides, 10 minutes, and you're presenting to the attention span of a 10-year-old. Now, what that means is you're keeping it pretty darn simple, and you're doing 1 slide per minute. It's a pretty good rule. Probably one of the most, I think, challenging mistakes, and you got to avoid, is lack of clarity. You know this stuff so well. It's all in your head. You're living it. You're breathing it. You're talking it. But when you start to tell somebody that, it's not real clear, right? Because it's obvious to you, but it's not obvious to everybody else. You have to, in a pitch, weave together all your information. You got to connect the dots for people so that it's a really clear story. You can't make it too obvious. And then the other common mistakes that we saw, just a poor layout, design, and complex diagrams that people don't understand. You don't have a lot of time. So what you say and show has to get buy-in. And who do you need buy-in from? Your audience, your investors, your judges, the folks listening. This is probably one of the most consistently overlooked pitch behaviors. You have to be mindful of who you're pitching to. It's most likely not going to be a homogeneous group. It's not all going to be software developers. They're not going to speak your speak, right? Don't use business jargon, acronyms. You have to speak, again, 10-year-olds. You're a founder, a business owner. You're going to constantly be pitching. Know who you're pitching to. Know what's in it for them. Investors are in it for them, right? You have to know what they're about. Judges, you might want to find out who's judging the pitch competition, right? This gives you insight on what they're going to be thinking about, what's important to them, and more importantly, what questions they might ask. Every pitch is generally followed by questions. All right, so keep it simple, which leads to the first of our 3 points, simplicity. Keep your deck simple and clear. I don't mean sterile, mind-numbing, or boring. You got to bring the energy. You got to bring the passion. You just have to keep it simple and not too much, which means quality over quantity. Again, your first instinct is to pack a lot in, go through, cut it out. Too many slides, reduce it, right? Maximize the amount of white space on a deck so it's easy to read. Here's a second point you might not consider. When you're making a slide, try to have one idea per slide, right? Too many ideas, and you don't know where it's going, right? If you start talking about something that's not on your slide, that can also be confusing. So one idea and what you're saying and showing should support that. And then be purposeful. Everything on that slide, everything that you say should support your purpose, your main message, why you're trying to get buy-in. So then what should be on your slides? Think headlines, bullet points, not paragraphs, not a lot of text. If you're reading, you're not listening, right? Your audience isn't listening to you if they're reading your slides. And then the message can be lost. Pictures. Show pictures and images. And of course, then I go and I throw a slide up here with no pictures. But I have examples to show you. Pictures speak 1,000 words. If you're going to use images, make sure they're high res. Make sure there's not a bunch of watermarks on there that shows that you didn't pay for them. And make sure they match your meaning, your purpose, your message. Avoid throwing those puzzle pictures up there. I've seen those all the time, and I'm like, what does that mean? So make sure your picture really conveys the message for you. And then here's another little rule. It's the rule of 3. It's used in interior design and landscape design. Grouping things in 3 is very appealing to the eye. So I generally always try to group things on my slides. It's a graphic design treatment as well, in 3s. It also is a nice little trick that it keeps you from putting too many bullets on your slides. So I always have 3. If I have to, max 5. Never put more than 5 bullet points on. It's too much. All right. Following this throughout your presentation or your pitch deck is making it consistent, which is our next point, consistency. It's the little things that make a big difference. Treating your elements of your slides. Pick one font, right? Mismatched fonts, drive slides crazy. Be consistent with your font. Pick one font size for your title, one font size for your subtitle, and then make it look a little different. I picked, just for the sake of this, I picked all caps for all my titles. But in the same font, I picked sentence case to show my subtitles. I use this throughout, right? I don't mix and match fonts. I don't mix and match colors. So when you're done, and this is another tip, go back, look at each page. Is every title treated the same? Is every subtitle treated the same? Is every headline or body copy treated the same? It's just the little things that make your pitch look polished and professional. You're pitching, you want to get buy-in for that, right? And then be efficient with decorating your slides. Don't overdo it with cheesy animations and a lot going on and transitions. This can be distracting. It can also go awry when you're trying to do presentations. So be efficient with decorating your slides. However, I love to see your branding come through. I know you're going to talk about branding. Make sure your business logo colors. I would always use that for my pitches. Always use my branding graphics, fonts, colors, pictures, stuff that talks to your business. And what you're trying to do is convey who you are, what it is, and hopefully you've started to design that with your branding for your business. Bring that through. I'd love to see logos. I have a logo. I use the Ben Franklin colors throughout. I always have a logo in the bottom corner. You want it to be, subliminal. It's there. It's not a big watermark in the middle of your presentation, but always have your logos top of mind and present on your slides. And then create a consistent flow. You'll hear me talk about flow and order a lot. I always suggest, before you even start to build your slides, you first do an outline. You do an outline, you get your story down, and then you start to build your slides. This can really help create that flow, create the order, and then that creates good structure. So for structure, as I said, you're doing an outline first. You want to be in control of what people hear and see first, second, third, right? This helps with visual cues. You can kind of create the way people look at your slides. I'm using a transition here. I build the points so that you're not reading before me, so I know what you're seeing first, second, third. And then use visual elements. You can use a pop of color to bring emphasis to something, to pull someone's attention. You can use bold, you can use sizing differences. What you're going for here is contrast. Never use yellow, you can't see it. Never use yellow. What you're going for is contrast, something to draw the eye to where you want it to go. And in general, white font on a dark background, dark font on a white background is, the most easy to read. And now that we're all in person again, make sure it's visible at the back of the room too for your contrast. All right, and then again, with logical order, you have your outline, you have your sequence. We read top to bottom, left to right. Make sure your points are in that same order. And when you're putting your script together, make sure you're talking in that same flow. I had a pitch today. Someone talked about their third point, and then they went to their second point, and then talked to their first point. It's just those little things, be polished, think about everything, be purposeful with everything. All right, so these are some of my just kind of basic principles, best practices. If there's any questions, or we can jump right into what to actually include on your slides. All right, so what to include. I often get asked, what makes a good pitch, a good business pitch? To me, if you can clearly define that there's a big problem or big customer needs, and you're solving it, and you have the team to bring it to market and scale, that makes a good pitch. That's what you got to get in there. So, and you got 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes to do all of this. A typical investor deck, as I said, most investor pitch decks, you're given 15 minutes. That's 12 to 15 slides. In your pitch for this lab, you have 5 minutes. I was a little aggressive. I said 10 slides, 7 to 10 slides. With that, that's 30 seconds a slide. You are clicking through them, right? You're not going fast, but you have information that you got to hit and get on with it. You can't go on and on. All right, I'm going to just quickly take you through each of these slides, and then we're going to go into each one in a little more detail. So pitch is always open with a company overview. What's your business purpose, your vision? And you got to get a hook in there. You got to pull somebody in with something interesting about it. And then you're going to go into the problem. What problem are you solving? What's your customer needs that you're delivering? And who is your customer? Don't forget to define your customer for the pitch. And then that takes you into the solution. That's your key benefits. What benefits are you bringing with this solution? That's your value proposition. And we'll go into that a little more detail. Then you finally get to what everybody is usually waiting to talk about, and that's product or service. I have to tell you, and I might have said this too, the difference between an investor pitch deck and a sales deck is a sales deck sells your product. When most people come in and they show me a pitch, they probably talk about their product for 80% of the time. Talk about the product, the features, the service, everything we do, and then 20% of the business. For an investor or a business pitch, you got to flip that. You're talking about your business for 80% of the time and your product and features for about 20% of the time. That's a business pitch. All right, so you took people through what your product and service is, how it's going to stack up against the competition. Is there a large market potential here that you're playing in? And then how does your business model and financial projections fit in there? How are you going to grow your business in this market, in this competitor landscape? And then, so important, is the team to do it. Who's going to do this for you? Who's going to help you drive this business? And then you get to the ask. All investor pitches have an ask. How much are you asking for funding? How is that fund going to be used to impact your business? How's it going to grow your business by getting that investment? And then importantly, how does your business impact the community? So that's it, 300 seconds, easy peasy. All right, so, and yes, yeah.
In the funding portion here for everybody, we would be looking for if I were to win the competition, what would I be using the funds for? Does that make sense? So it's slightly different than if you were walking into a financial institution and asking for, $100,000 for a specific purpose. In this case, the funding portion is around how would I use the funds if I were to win.
Great, yep, thank you. All right, so we're going to talk briefly about each one of those slides, how you're going to be compelling, credible, clear, and concise to achieve this goal, to get buy-in, right? You're telling your story. Pitching is really storytelling. It really is. And you're leaving that investor engaged and wanting to hear more. So let's show how we would begin. I like to have an opening slide. This is not what I'm pitching to. This is just as I'm getting ready, I have a slide up. It's almost like planting the seed. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm Julie Bratton. I have my contact information. There's my logo. And I give a little wow statement, a positioning statement. If you don't have one of these, get one, right? You should have a tagline, a positioning statement. It's really powerful. You can use that a lot of places. So I throw this up as I'm getting ready and everybody's sitting in. And you can already start to say, Ben Franklin invests in innovation. That's kind of interesting. I wonder what that's about. You just start to get people thinking about what you're going to present. I actually then like the pitch to start, and this would be your first slide, and it's your company overview. So remember, you're grabbing someone's attention with a hook. Sometimes people use a statistic. Did you know that 20% of our electricity on the microgrid comes from nuclear power? Just something like, oh, no, I didn't get that, right? So it's a pull you in. It can be a stat. It can be a one-liner if you're funny. Most people aren't. It can be, I like an emotional hook. I like a personal story hook, something to get you in. However, and this is the hard part, it's got to be really relevant, really short, right, and impactful, because you don't have much time. You have to talk here about your business purpose. It's your overview. If you can learn to talk about your business, what your business does and for whom, in 1 or 2 sentences, you've just connected all the dots for people right up front, and you'll use that anywhere. That's your really quick elevator pitch, right? When you have 30 seconds to tell someone what your business is about. I like to hear the hook where you pull someone in, you tell them what your business is all about and your purpose, and then you roll right into the problem. Now, here's where a great picture speaks 1,000 words, right? You get my problem, right? A house is on its roof. The homeowner really has a hard time taking a shower, right? You don't have to clutter it with text and all kinds of information. Make sure, again, it's crisp, it's clear, and it speaks to your problem. Pictures make things come to life and make it more relatable. The most important thing on a problem side, though, is don't forget to highlight who has the problem. That's the customer. Who's going to be paying you? Then you can define and describe the solution. To me, the solution is the most important slide. It's your value proposition. How are you solving the problem better than the competition? So write this down. The solution are benefits, key benefits that you're delivering, not product features, right? Why will people buy your product, buy your service? You're asking them to change behavior, right? Because they're doing something else. You're asking them to switch or change behavior, reach into their pocket and pay you money for it. What are the benefits for them? That's what you highlight in this slide. And that is your competitive advantage, right? After you demonstrated what your competitive advantage is, why customers will buy you, you can now, talk about your product or features. People really like to do this. Keep it to one page. Remember, if you have a technical business, make sure it's in layman's terms, 10-year-olds, right? Don't make it too technical. You don't have to go into a lot of details. You do have to briefly say what your product is and how it works, or your service. Remembering this is a business pitch. Investors invest in your business. They don't buy your product. So you're selling the company. You're getting buy into the company, not the product. But then once you show how the product and service is better than the competition, you can go into the competition, go into the competitive landscape. Here's a good point too. Every business has competition. Number one rule when you're talking about competition, never say there isn't any competition. There always is. And I can guarantee you, and I have seen it a number of times, where there's a judge or an investor sitting there on their phone finding a competitor and saying, well, this is often close to what you're doing, right? It's not pretty. So don't say that. You're actually looking to prove that and demonstrate that you understand the competitive landscape and you understand your competitive advantage. You can do this a number of ways. You can show your competitor logos, where you talk to them like, this is the size of the competitor, this is what they do, this is their market share. If you're going to use logos, make sure they're nice and crisp, not grainy, that you didn't blow up and get them all out of whack. Another way to show competitor landscape is a quadrant chart. This usually shows like a market gap or a white space gap in the top right corner where there's no one playing, and that's where my company is now going to play. Kind of shows the opportunity. My favorite way to show a competitor, the competition or the competitor landscape, is a benefits table. Notice I didn't say a features table. This is where you list those 5 benefits that you're delivering to your customers. You're showing how your company solves all 5 of those benefits, and the competitors, hey, look, they only give 1 or 2. That's your competitive advantage. Once you convey you understand the competitive landscape, you can also talk to the market size here, your market potential, or you can show it in its own slide. What you're demonstrating in a market slide is that this is a big market. There's a lot of room to play. There's a lot of market potential here. You can look online. There's a lot of templates that show you how to put your market size, how to show it, make it clean, simple, easy, label your axis, and make it realistic. That's the key here. Don't overblow things, and say, oh, my share of the market's going to be $100 billion. Right? No, I don't get it. All right, so make it realistic. Once you show your kind of market potential, you can then start to get into your business plan. How are you going to fit into this market? What's your plan? There's a number of ways to kind of show business plans and your models. One is a revenue model. It's how do you show, who do you sell to, at what price, and how are you going to reach them? Sometimes you can focus, people put like a go-to-market strategy here. How am I going to get customers? How am I going to keep them? How am I going to grow them? If you have revenue, which I've kind of was hearing, a lot of you folks are already in generating revenue, congratulations. Tell people, right? It is important that you tell people that you already are generating revenue and that you're already making money. Show that, say that. If you're not creating revenue already, it's fine to move on, and you can talk about your sales projections. But everyone should kind of go into sales projections. There's a number of ways to show sales projections. We like to see 3 to 5 years for sales projections. Like to start with actuals and then show projections. Again, you can do it with line graphs, bar charts. Just make sure it's clean and simple. You don't go into too much. Your axes are clearly labeled. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. Sometimes you'll get more questions in your Q&A. Here's another example. As investors, we know that there's probably, your first year's pretty well thought out. We know there's a little more guesswork to year 2, and year 3, and year 4 and 5, there's a whole lot of guesswork. Investors know these, and judges know these numbers aren't going to be 100% correct. So you can take the pressure off of yourself for that. What we're constantly looking for is, does it show your plan? Does it show something that's realistic, right? That's what we're looking for. Another example is a table. I like to see financials even in a table. It's a very quick, clean way to look at numbers. Again, I like to see if you're already generating revenue, start with an actuals column. Take it through your first year, second year, third year projections. You're looking at things like revenue, profits. We throw employees on that because we're economic development. We like to see how your businesses will grow and create headcount.
And just to throw in, if you recall when we spoke about this, when we did business plans, we don't expect everybody to be rich in their first year business, right? So if you're at a phase where you're starting off, it's better to show that you might have a loss, because that tells us that you understand your business and how it's actually going to run, right? Versus the person that walks in and tells us that they're making $1 million year 1. We got questions before you even started talking at that point. So this is a good indicator of slow growth for us to be able to support it from a financial capacity standpoint.
Yeah, great point. We generally don't see profit first year, second year, maybe even third. Really good to point out when you expect to break even. That's something everybody wants to hear. So, yeah, great points. All right. Another two, if you have, back to Natalie's point, if you have a kind of a big increase in sales, maybe from 3 years to 4 years, it's a good point, too, to say, okay, I expect this increase because of Y, right? Again, it's just giving a little more insights into your business plan. If there's something really, a big jump, tell them why. Well, this is when I go, e-commerce goes live, or, that sort of thing. Just give a little bit of meat to why those things are happening. All right, so then how are you going to get all this growth? The A team, right? On your team chart, you want to highlight the key experiences, the key members on your team. You don't have to go into lengthy bios and titles. That's what resumes are for. That's not here. What's most often missed is how are these people going to contribute to that growth plan? What's Jay going to do to drive growth? What's Roger going to do to drive growth? I want to know, based on their experience and their expertise, how they're going to contribute to this business. That's what's important about the team. If you're missing a crucial role, you don't have a CTO, you can leave that circle or that box empty and say, okay, I know this is a gap. This is our first fill. It's probably going to be what your funding ask is for, right? So it all fits together in the story. Actually, one other thing, you can also add key strategic partners or advisors to this chart. We see that a lot. The purpose of your team chart is you really want to generate confidence. You want to demonstrate your credibility. They want to believe in you. Investors like horse racing. They bet on the jockey, right? Investors bet on the team. So they're going to have a lot of questions here. All right. They believe in the team. You've just told me what you're going to do. And it's to get your ask, your close. I generally like to see it almost, in a similar kind of slide layout to what I opened with. I have the logo, I have my wow statement, I have my contact information, and I have the ask. The ask is in typical investor pitches, you state how much you're asking for and how the funds are going to be used. To Natalie's point, for this competition, I think the prize amount is, what, $12,000, or like you can use an amount and then say how you would use these prize award monies to advance or accelerate your business. What would you put those funds to? I've seen this in bullet points. I've seen it in a pie chart. The key thing here that I would remember is if I'm going to ask for $10,000, I'm not going to list that I'm going to hire 3 people, I'm going to start my marketing campaign, I'm going to do my software development, and I'm going to go to 4 trade shows. You ain't doing that for $10,000. It makes me look like I don't understand my expenses or my plan. I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there. Make it align. Make it work. I mean, it should be coming from your plan, so the numbers should fit and work. And then, so what you're really looking to do here is this fund is going to really impact my business. I'm going to grow my business by doing this and getting this fund, this capital, this investment. And then you can also turn that into if your business grows and your business is going to impact how? The community. So important to do here. A tight summary and close is very important. You're just reminding people quickly, your business purpose and your vision. You don't have to throw up a thank you slide or a question slide. I like to just hear people say, thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions? As far as the Q&A, most pitches are followed by a Q&A session, as I believe this one will be as well, like a 2-minute Q&A. Again, when you're doing competitions, Q&A is also timed. And investor pitches, there's a certain amount of time that you have for questions. Therefore, you have to be very concise with your answers as well. Preparing for the Q&A is every bit as important as preparing for your pitch. It's a lot like preparing for a job interview. Think about the questions that you might get. Prepare answers in advance. Look at each slide. What questions do I think I might get from this slide? This slide, this. Go through each one and think about what you could be asked. It will help you. Prepare answers. You got to make them tight and concise because you want to get to as many questions as the judges or the investors can give you. And the problem happens when someone rambles on with an answer. It usually gets confusing because you're going on, and you only get to one question. Here's kind of some truth to it. A lot of investors will make the decision from the Q&A sessions. It's really important. All right? The best way I can say is just listen to the question intently. Listen for the answer because you want to make sure you also answer the question, that you're not just answering. We've all seen debates and how annoying it is when the politicians don't answer the questions. Don't do that in an investor pitch. Answer the question concisely, stop, and listen for the next question. If you don't know the answer, it's fine to give yourself a second or two and say, hey, can you clarify that question for me? Or I don't have that answer right now. Can I get back to you with that? That's cool. All right, practicing your Q&A and pitch goes a long way for your delivery, building that confidence. A few points on that. Have someone else review your deck for typos and grammatical errors. When you work on this a lot, you won't see them, right? You'll just skim right over them. Have someone look for those. Again, I think I mentioned, having a script. For a 5-minute pitch, there's a lot. We often suggest for our competitions that you do a narrative. You write it all out and you practice it so that you can get it into 5 minutes. Then you start cutting it out on note cards. Just have bullet points. Get it something short and sweet. But a script really helps you stay focused and on time. If you can read it in 5 minutes, there's a good chance you'll get through it and be done in 5 minutes. Then you just have to practice and get it to that. Practice, 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 right? I like to tell people to videotape your pitches. Zoom makes it really easy to record and watch yourself. You can watch yourself and listen for things that maybe you can cut some words out. Maybe you went a little too long in one area, or you have some nervous habits that could be sucking out some of the time, so you can try to eliminate those. So watch yourself and record yourself. And again, keep timing it. Avoid things that can go wrong in pitch presentations. A lot of animation or transitions, sometimes they can, if they don't start working, they can rattle you. And we generally tell people no video, especially for really short pitches. Unless it's really critical to demonstrate something or show a video, I swear you can practice a video 20 times and it's perfect, and then the day of the pitch, it freezes and locks up your whole slide deck. And man, that talk about getting rattled, right? So just be careful. If you're going to do a video and it's really important, practice on the exact equipment that you're going to give the pitch with, so that it's smooth and you're sure that you have, we do a lot through Zoom, so internet's, glitchy and videos won't work. So just be really mindful if you have to do it, and try to avoid anything that could mess that up. And then on delivery, pace is important, right? I mean, the tendency is have so much information, I'm going to talk really fast and get it all packed in there, right? But if you're talking really fast, people aren't going to catch all those key messages. Pace is incredibly important. Practice at a conversation speed, maybe a little bit slower, because nerves does, we do tend to talk a little bit faster if you get nervous. But pace is important. Cadence is important, right? Hopefully I didn't talk monotone and put you to sleep, like robotic. So try to change your inflection, try to change your articulation, do something a little different to make sure that you keep pulling those listeners in, right? You can just do a really purposeful pause, right? Like that just stops, pull people in, just that one little second. Hand gestures, and the most important thing, eye contact. Never turn your back on anyone when you're presenting. Always try to make eye contact. You are trying to connect to get buy-in, right? So important to get your goal, and that is tell your story, get buy-in, get your funding, win the competition. All right, so in summary, keep your pitch deck simple, concise, and well-structured. Be compelling, right? Engaging, be credible. They gotta believe in you, right? They gotta believe in you. Be clear and concise. Know your audience and what's in it for them. There is no substitution for practice, and practicing for the Q&A is every bit as important as practicing for the pitch. And then bring it home with a confident delivery. Now, one other note, if you follow this and you create your slide decks like this, you'll realize too that this is not a leave behind pitch deck. You can't leave this with someone, you print it out, because there's not enough text or enough copy, they won't get it. So this is not a leave behind pitch deck. You most likely, if you're in a situation where you're leaving this with someone, you might have to have two, right? You might have to have a copy that has more text, if that's the situation. But there shouldn't be a lot of text if you're following this format. So, and then one other note to end on, you will never be done with your pitch, right? You will always be fine-tuning your pitch as your business is hopefully growing and evolving. You'll be evolving and changing your pitch as your business grows. So embrace it. Learn to do this. Unfortunately, it is one of the things that we do as business owners. But the more you pitch, the more comfortable you'll get. And like I said, wonderful programs like that, is helpful to do that. And then hopefully, you'll be in situations where you'll be pitching for real investment, real funding, and hopefully one day even I'll put a shameless plug in there for Ben Franklin Investments. So any questions? That is what I had for today. So good luck with your rest of your program. right, any questions? Oh, thank you. All right, yeah, fire away. No, I didn't prepare anything. No, I'm just kidding.
So I know when you talk about the team, so like myself, it's just me right now, I don't have a team. Is it okay to reflect that you don't really have?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of solo entrepreneurs and business owners. Again, strategic partners, business advisors, showing what your next team member would be. You know, it's very common. Yep. Yeah.
What is it going in with being a person that wears all the hats? How do you say it again? With being a person that wears all the hats, how do you project that without feeling like
Yeah.
you're overwhelmed
Well,
or doing too much?
welcome to startup worlds and business owners. I think that you have to take your key hat, right? You have to have a key hat that you're wearing when you're pitching for a business. So what is the hat that you wear that will grow your business, that will make investors believe that you're the one running the show and you're going to deliver? So think about the best hats. And then, you know, I would say look at your other team members and distribute the hats, right? Make sure you have folks wearing different ones.
It's hard to hear if you're in the back.
Oh, okay. Oh, was I not loud enough, or? No, the question. Oh, okay, sorry.
Hello.
Yes,
My
hi.
question to you is, how do we manage the balance of telling our story and also doing the product? Like, what do you say is a good time limit on that?
With a balance of what, telling your-
Like telling your story, but then also giving your business pitch. It seems like a lot to do in 5 minutes.
It is a lot to do. And that's why you got to get it down to the main points with each slide and thinking about what it is. Like you have to get down to, this is the problem I'm solving. This is the solution. I mean, it's like going through it like that. And hopefully you'll put together a story that says, oh yeah, I want to learn more. And you'll get other conversations where you can go into more details and stuff. But yeah, it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy to bring that down. So, and believe me, I spend probably 50% of my time helping people
Prepare.
bring it down. Yep.
Oh, so condense. You spend
Condense.
50% of your time helping people condense.
Yeah,
That's
helping
good to
people
know.
get, you know, a year's worth of information down to 5 minutes, you know, or what you've been working for years on to build. And how do I tell somebody that in 10 minutes, 5 minutes? You know, it's not easy. So that's why you got to get it, that you got to boil it down and get to the main message.
No, I agree with you that there is no substitution for practice.
Yep.
That's why I eat a lot before I say fat jokes.
Yeah.
This is mainly a question for M&T Bank. Are we business pitching or am I product pitching? Because I really enjoyed like the 80% you're pitching your business versus the 20% you're pitching your product. So I just wanted a little bit of more.
You want me to answer that question? I think it really depends upon how you're going to be using the funds. So if the funds are going to be used to design new products, then focus much more on the product. If it's more to advance the business, then focus much more on the business. Would you agree with that, Natalie? Okay. I see a question over here. Let me get over here.
Okay, just for clarification, I just wanted to ask about the revenue model. Is this model only if you are producing revenue, or if you have a model where you show you can produce revenue, do you put that there as well?
A revenue model would be, even if you're not yet generating model, it's to show me how you're going to.
Okay.
We work with a lot of SaaS business. I want to hear that it's a subscription-based business. Here's my pricing, and that sort of thing, so that I understand a little bit of how you're going to make money.
Okay, and just for clarification, so you would like to see the market share, revenue model, growth plan, and sales projections, and
I guess it depends on what stage of the business that you're on. I just gave you a couple examples of
Right.
either. You're probably not going to get to all of those, right?
okay.
So pick what's most important for your business and for your business story.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
And my question, I'm back here. How you doing? Are there any key suggestions or differences when people are pitching a product versus pitching a service that you would suggest just because you're going, obviously you're telling a story, et cetera, but are there any key points that you would share with the business owner who's sharing a product versus sharing a service?
Yeah, I mean, some of the same things still relate, right? Your competition, you still want to show how your product competes with the competition. I'd still want to know, pricing structure, how you're going to sell it, and that revenue type of stuff. Maybe you heavy up a little bit more on the how it works and, that sort of thing that you wouldn't do in, as heavy in a business pitch. Maybe there's a little demo, that sort of thing that you'd have time that you wouldn't have time in a business.
I'd say this, so just for the benefits of everyone, and thank you. Julie gave a wealth of information today relative to just business pitching in general, right? So the generics of pitching consistently. So as we go through the rest of the program, think through how a first round of pitching is a 2-minute video. That for me is that you're taking on your cell phone and you're sending us, right? That for me is when you come into me in the elevator and I say to you, hey, what do you do? Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you going to tell me in 2 minutes that gives me a hook, that makes me want to ask more questions, right? You'll have the capacity to also answer the questions that we provided. So on day one in your packets, there was pitch questions. For those that did receive Gail's email, it was attached, so we'll send that out again. But there'll be questions that you can narrate exactly what it is you want to tell us in more depth. But you've got 2 minutes with your initial pitch on your cell phone to just give us a flair of who you are, right? What I would call the essential elevator pitch that I kind of make my team do as well. And then if we make it through that round, then we get to like the live pitch, right? Which is a lot more around what Julie was speaking about today. But the importance of that is you need to have that information and be prepared anyway, because as your businesses grow and you continue to look for funding and you show up at a bank or the EDC or Community First Fund or whatever that is, you're going to need to be able to tell your story, right? And it's a good habit to get into, to be able to articulate in a very condensed amount of time who you are, what you do, what you're providing, right? What the problem is you're solving for, and what change that makes, and how you're going to do it, right? So keep that in mind as we continue to go through this. A lot of what Julie mentioned, though, are great tactics and skills. She talked about pace. Think about when it rains and it's pouring. Water basically sheets off the earth, right? So speak in a drizzle, not in a downpour, right? Nothing absorbs if you speak like too fast. Nobody really understands the concepts of what you're trying to say. So just a lot of what Julie spoke about can translate, but make sure you understand that for purposes of the competition, for this in particular, we've got a two-phased approach, right? You're going to go content heavy in your articulation, which is why we talked business planning, and then you're going to give us a snippet of who you are, and you're probably going to create 20 videos of yourself. I think people that did it last year were laughing because they had done, some people had done 25 videos of themselves on their phones before they got it down. So to just gives you some practice. I'm going to put Michael, or you here? I'm going to put you on the spot. Because you love when I do that.
And she does it all the time, so.
I'm going to have you share with everybody your elevator pitch. And I'll give you 2 seconds to think about it, because you should know it. But I have my team do this all the time, mostly because our role is in sales, right? And if he walks into an event at the chamber down the street and someone says, hey, Michael, I see you're from M&T Bank, what is it that you do? He's got about 20 seconds to engage someone. You want to go?
Sure. So, Michael Stevens, I'm a relationship manager with M&T Bank, and what that means is I work with businesses every day to understand every element of how cash flows in and out of your business, and I help you identify solutions that are going to be valuable to you, saving you time, saving you money, and helping you accomplish your goals.
So this is a good example, and thank you. I know you're going to do that, but and I do it all the time with my team. But that's the reality, right? Like the reality is, you should know who you are So just making sure you guys think through who you are on the elevator. If someone stopped you on the elevator, what would you say? Can we give Julia
Very good.
a applause?
Okay, thanks. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you for being cognizant of the fact that we've got a lot planned for you this evening. This is a big night, but we'll try to take it a little easier on you next week. So, right from pitch to financial statements and personal credit, all about credit. And tonight I'm joined by two colleagues, Michael Stevens and our famous Lorena Rakowski, who was here for our business plan, so you probably remember Lorena. But they are really experts that I work with at M&T. We actually are kind of hub buddies because we all sit on the same floor. I've been adopted by the business banking department, by the way. So anything they do, want to. So, but anyway, they're awesome. They are going to step us through rather quickly and then entertain some questions. And then we really are going to strive to get out of here at 8 o'clock. Natalie's going to wrap us up at 7:55 so that she can give us some really important points on what we talked about tonight and what you need to know. Natalie, do you want to add anything for Michael and Lorena? Cool. Okay, I'll hand it over.
Thank you, Gail. She's always judging. Hello, friends. I feel like I can say that because you all met me just a few minutes ago when Nat called me out. Thanks so much. She does that so well. Hey, we've got a lot of information to cover today, so we're going to move awfully quickly through this. It's really great information, though, but here's what I want you to know. This is all about you. If you have a question, raise it up. Okay? Fair enough? We're looking for participation as well, so please, again, make the most of this time. All righty. Next slide, please. Lorena, Vanna, what are you going by today? All right, so what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about financial statements. Why are they important? And it's because it really tells the story of your business, right? And so diving down a little bit into that is the income statement. That's going to speak to profitability. It's going to speak to the revenue and your expenses that you have as a company. Your balance sheet is a snapshot of the financial position of your company. It's going to speak to the things that the company owns versus the things that the company owes and how we use that as a tool. We're going to talk about a framework called the 5 C's of credit. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then, of course, we'll take a little time to tie it all up in the end. Fair enough? Yes. All righty. Moving right along. I'm looking for a volunteer, please, to read the green ribbon. Anybody? In the back.
Financial statements answer the questions. 1, how does this company make money? 2, what is this company worth?
I like the enthusiasm. Thank you. Yeah, so a quick question. When you think about financial statements, what you think about what was just read in the green ribbon, who do you think would be interested in seeing or reviewing financial statements? We don't have to be formal, just shout it out. Who might want to see your financial statements? Bankers, lenders, investors, right? Your accountant, absolutely. So documents that tell your story, the income statement. We talked a little bit about this in the introduction. It's a profitability statement. Balance sheet. We're going to talk to your net worth and your financial health. Statement of cash flows, the ins and outs of cash, and we'll talk about how that's helpful to understand. The owner's personal financial statement. Lorena's going to share a little bit about that here in a little bit. The credit report. Obviously, I think probably, I shouldn't say obviously, but your personal experience, your activity and your history from a credit perspective on the personal side. In that green bubble, you have banks analyze 3 years of financial statements to look at trends. Why do you think that's important? Consistency, right? Somebody else? That's all right, go ahead. Okay, and somebody else, thank you. And somebody said something else?
By the 3rd year, you should be making or moving your business moving, because the first 2 years, usually you're not. It's not until the 3rd year you actually start making something.
Okay, so a lot of times it takes a couple of years to kind of get things rolling, right? Yeah, so that's going to help us to be able to really understand if there's any windfall transactions, so large influxes of cash, or maybe there's some large expenses that happen, maybe one time, or whatever's going on. It could be a whole lot of different things, but we want to understand that as we help you to tell your story and get you the tools and resources that you need with credit and other financial resources. So I believe we are at the income statement slide. We are at the income statement slide. Let me back up. All right. I'm looking for another volunteer to read. The green ribbon. Would you be open?
A summary of the business's performance as reflected in the probability or lack of it over a period of time. It itemizes the revenues and expenses of past results that lead to the current profit or loss.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. All right, at the top of your page, write this down, please. Take your pens and write revenue minus expenses equals your net income. Revenue minus your expenses equals your net income. I also wanted to ask you to take a look at the word time in the beginning of the second line in the green ribbon there. When we're looking at the income statement, these reports can be provided to us monthly. We can take a look at it quarterly, or we can take a look at it annually. And again, it's all about helping us to understand what's going on with the business. The revenues on the income statement, those are your sales, right? That's the money coming in because you've produced or you've provided a service and you've made a sale. The expenses, we're looking at things, and again, lots of different possibilities here, but salaries, rents, supplies, things that you need to pay for to be able to produce your product. And then profits, gross profit, net profit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. Anything to add, Lorena?
You are on a roll.
All right. So here we have an example. Here we have an example of an income statement, and I want to just make up a fictitious business. We're going to call it Dave's Dining Room Tables. Okay, so how much do you see that Dave sold? How many tables in terms of dollars did Dave sell? 100,000, right? Now, does that mean he made $100,000? Does he get to keep 100,000? Right, because that next line is the cost of goods sold. So how much did Dave have to spend in order to manufacture the table, right? 60,000. So that's the actual gross profit. That's the amount that he spent to actually produce the product. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So then after that, we're going to take out other expenses. So expenses, just whatever it takes to run the business from day to day. We want to capture all of that. Normal business expenses, so general administrative costs, marketing, advertising, and other. So then we're going to go down to other categories as well on the income statement, and they may not fit nicely into one of those categories, right? So, but they still have to be accounted for because they're still an expense for your business. So we're going to capture everything on this report, the income statement. So ultimately, our idea here in looking at that is just to really have a detailed understanding of the revenue that's coming into the business and, of course, the expenses that you are paying. Any questions?
Do you have an extra packet by chance?
No, do we?
Wait, you got, how many do we have? That's what I'm here for. Are we all good? Yep. No, don't worry about it. Speak up.
Other thoughts, ideas? Okay.
Can I ask everyone one question though? Yes. What do we see that's missing from this income statement? Say that again? It's an example, but yeah, it definitely follows. How much did he get paid? It's interesting, isn't salaries. So they're basically making nothing, yeah. So is this indicative of starting out a business? Yeah. Okay, sorry. I mean, it does, but I mean, how much is the operating, you know what I mean? Like, think about that. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that, they want to pay themselves first. So it was always interesting when I looked at this earlier. Sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
No, that's a
I
good-
can't
good
shut
point.
up, so trying really hard.
Yeah, of course. No. So salaries are definitely an expense, right? Because the business is paying for that, and that's not money coming in, that's money going out, hopefully in your pocket though, right? But the cost of goods sold are actually associated specifically to what it takes to manufacture the product. Pardon? Good question. Go ahead.
It's operating at a loss.
Right.
You said why?
Yeah.
Probably because they need to get a better business plan.
That was a great answer. I can help you. No, I'm joking. No, seriously, what do you mean, a better business plan?
I'm just speaking from real experience.
A lot of people, guys, are not getting paid when they start the business. Some people focus on that business and they say, oh, well, look how much money I'm going to make. But at the end of the day, that first year, you're probably not going to make all that much money, right? And that's kind of a realistic thought process.
If
you have
we
your
could,
hand up,
just
hon?
real quick though, I want to go back to Ron. I don't know that we answered your question, Ronnie, right? So the cost of goods sold really with a service business, there's really not a whole lot. You're going to focus a lot more on the administrative expenses. Does that make sense? Okay. Your question?
I was more or less saying that net income, that 8,000 is probably gonna go right back into business.
Why?
That's how you keep the business running.
I love it.
Do you think everybody
Great
does that
answer.
though?
The 8,000 is going to go back into the business versus them spending the $8,000 that they earned. That's how you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really great point to make because we do see that a lot. People take everything they can out of the business, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Great point. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on if there's nothing further. All right. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, again, in the spirit of keeping our time, but so has anybody heard the term before, EBITDA?
What is the term?
EBITDA. It was actually in the presentation before, as part of the table, I noticed, if you're going to put anything like that in your presentation for your pitch. But at the same time, it's not something that a lot of people understand. It's kind of complex. So again, we won't spend a lot of time on it, but what it is an acronym, and it's really measuring profitability of the business. And so what it stands for are earnings before interest, taxes. And then the DA part would be depreciation and amortization. So here's why it's important for tonight's discussion. Take a look at the box that says, how much of a business loan can I afford? Okay, so the EBITDA calculation, it starts with the net income figure on your income statement, and then we're going to add back those items that are in that acronym. So the interest, the taxes, okay, and then that's going to give us a figure. And when we take that figure, and this is what's in the example there, loan payments of $6,000 a year, and our EBITDA calculation is 11,000, okay? Everybody with me? 11,000 EBITDA divided by our loan payment of $6,000 shakes out to 1.83 times. All right, above that, you have 1.2. 1.2 in this case represents the target, and honestly, you'd want that to be a little bit higher, but if 1.2 is the target, then what do you think about this business's ability to afford the loan in this example. Say it? So if 1.2 is the target and then 1.83 times is the actual calculation, so 1.83 versus 1.2. Yeah, this would actually be a decent calculation.
I think this is why this is important, not necessarily for you guys, but just for everyone to understand how it is financial institutions and lenders figure out your solvency for debt service, right? So whether you're making enough income to service your debt, a lot of times, 9 out of 10 times, we all use around 1.2 times and or 1.25. And what that means in the simplistic way is for every dollar of debt that you have, we want you to be making $1.20 in income, right? For that extra 20 cents to really capture any emergency purposes, right? So we never want you to be even apples to apples. We don't want like a one-to-one debt service, because then if something happens and you need to, the roof falls apart and you need to get a new roof, you need to have some extra income. You don't necessarily have to calculate the 1.2 times, but it's good to understand what goes into it from a lending situation, right? So 9 out of 10 times, this is what we're calculating with the financials that you're providing us, and we're making sure that you've got at least 1.2 times. So $1.20 of income for every dollar of debt that you have. And anything you have above and beyond that is gravy. But that's what we calculate. And so if we call someone and say, here's the situation, you just asked for a $100,000 loan, but you really can only afford, based on our calculation, $900,000, right? Because we don't want to put you in a position where you're strapped. That's how we get that. We're running numbers up against that 1.2, and those are the metrics that go into it. Okay? So you don't necessarily need to calculate it, but understanding how we get to it is important, just so that you know what we're looking for.
Thank you, Nat. Question behind you?
What is the net interest expense?
Did she say net?
Net interest expense?
So it's basically the interest that this business is paying on anything 9 times out of 10 that they're borrowing. So like if they have a line of credit, if they have a loan already, that's the interest expense that they're spending for that debt.
So if a business doesn't have any credit open, their net interest income or expense is 0.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. By the way, I just want to make the comment that this is really high-level stuff, and what we're trying to do in 35 minutes is actually something we could spend a whole semester doing in college, and people do. So please don't feel overwhelmed. This rely heavily on your CPA, your bankers, because this is the stuff that we do every day. Just have a handle on it, so that you can drive the course for your business, okay? All right, next slide is the balance sheet. A volunteer to read the balance sheet, green stripe.
A condensed statement that shows the financial position of an entity on a specified date.
Yeah, thank you. What I'd like to point out to you here is that the balance sheet has 3 particular elements, okay? The first one are assets. Assets are things that a business owns, okay? Number 2, on the balance sheet, you're going to find liabilities. Liabilities are the things that a business owes. So the assets are what the business owns. The liabilities are what the business owes. I want to ask you to put a number 3 in there, because when you look at a balance sheet, there's another section that's kind of important, and that is equity. In the example you see, it's called owner's equity. Also write down this calculation because it's going to be helpful to you, again, driving the course as you have conversations in the future. There's an equation that we call the accounting equation. It is assets equal liabilities plus equity. The reason I wanted to bring that to your attention, again, assets equals liabilities plus equity, is because that's the equation that puts the whole name of the form together. It is a balance sheet. So if all of those things plug into the equation properly, then your business is in balance, if that makes sense, at the simplest level. All right. The equation? Yeah. So assets equal liabilities plus equity. So by the way, we said assets are the things a business owns, liabilities are the things a business owes. Equity, thank you. Equity would be the difference then between the two. So what the business owes back then to the owner, or retained earnings, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Okay? All right.
It's a lot, guys, right? So we just want to give you kind of a brief on sometimes your banker will ask these questions. Sometimes you have a conversation with customers about a balance sheet and they're like, I don't know what you mean. I'm not, I mean, it literally happens. So just knowing the terms, kind of having an idea. Go ahead.
I guess if you're just starting a business, how does, and a business does not own any assets, how does that affect, I mean, your balance sheet's gonna look a little liability heavy.
Well, it could, right?
Or maybe a little owner equity heavy.
That's right. That's right.
So.
Keep going.
Like, the question is,
You're
Yeah.
actually, yeah. Same exactly.
like, basically what happens is when you go in to present these things, how do you compensate, or how do you, yeah, how do
Did
you?
you just say the pet? I love it.
Because they're going to know that you're going to struggle. The first year is never going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. We're going to operate at a loss. The pitch is what you believe in. You believe in yourself. You know what you're worth. You know your value. Put that into the pitch.
Yeah, great point. So circling back to your idea, because you're right on target. Her question is the balance sheet going to be very liability heavy in the beginning stages of the business? And it could, if you choose to take a lot of liability. However, what we find, and probably speaking to the heart of all of you in this room, is that from an owner's equity perspective, if you look in there under the owner's equity section, do you see where it says paid capital? How many of you have paid capital into your business? You've invested your own dollars into the business. That's why that owner's equity section would be heavy, especially in the first couple of years. Okay? Awesome. All right, we're moving right along. Debt to equity ratio. Looking for a volunteer to read the green stripe. Thank you.
Measure of a firm leverage and its capacity for debt repayment.
Right. So really what we're looking here is the degree that a company is financing the operations of their business through debt versus if they have the money in the business to be able to pay for it. So for example, if a company needed a truck and they could afford to buy it because they have the money in the business, are they buying it with the money in the business and reinvesting that $8,000 that we talked about earlier? Are they going to reinvest that? Or are they going to take that out and put it in their pocket and then go get a loan to buy the truck? And that may not be a bad idea. However, no situation is the same. But the point is that's the idea. Are we leveraging debt to be able to grow our business, or are we leveraging what we have in the business to be able to grow? Make sense? Yeah. Okay. In this example, right? So total liabilities, your ratio is determined by this calculation. Total liabilities divided by the owner's equity. And so that gives you the ratio in this example, 28,000 over 10,000, and it gives you 2.8. So in this example, 2.8 times more liabilities than the company has equity. I want to give you just a quick idea here. The target is 2. You don't want to be more than 2 because 2 means that you're kind of risky. So in this case, it's going to be a little bit on the higher risk side. Would you agree? Okay. Again, in the spirit of moving forward, but I want to answer any questions you might have. Hearing none, moving forward. Current ratio. Who's up for the green stripe?
Indicator of a firm's ability to meet short-term
Yeah. Short term, thank you. Short term is the key word here. This is a liquidity ratio. We're determining the company's liquidity. So in this example, take a look at the equation. Current assets over current liabilities. That gives you the current ratio. By the way, the word current, Lorena, tell them what current means.
We know each other too well. So what does current mean? Does anyone know? Sorry? So what? 1 year, right? Absolutely. So any that are a year or less. Long-term liabilities are different. They're over 1 year. So just think about it as 1 year, okay?
All right, so the obligations of 1 year, thank you, great. 13,000 over 5,000. I want to help you think about this a little bit differently. If I stopped working at M&T Bank today, it's not going to happen, Natalie, I'm still here. But if I stopped working today and in my bank account I had $13,000 and I had no more income coming in, but my monthly expenses were $5,000, so using the equation here. So I got 13 grand in my bank account, no more income coming in, and my monthly expenses are $5,000. How long, how many months can I stay afloat?
Got it. 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah, so 2.6.
2.6.
So I better hustle and find something else, right? But yeah, so that's how you kind of think about the current ratio. Say it again? Only if your car doesn't break down. Because things come up all the time, right? Yeah. A good current ratio is going to be anywhere from like 1.2 to 2. Okay? All right. We'll go ahead and move along. You're up, Lorena.
Okay. All right, guys, so personal financial statement. Why is it important? I just screamed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Why is a personal financial statement important to a business? But why on the personal side?
Lorena, what's a personal financial statement?
What? That must have been a trick question. What is it? Anyone? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's your financial picture.
What do you mean you?
Your
Your business?
Your household.
Oh, your
individual-
household.
Your individual
Yeah.
assets, liabilities, credit. Pretty much basically how much your cash flow reports.
It's not technically a cash flow, but it kind of is. If you look, guys, everyone in your packets has a sample completed, and then you have a blank sample. This is M&T Bank's personal financial statement. It's the statement of you personally, okay? So you personally, if you're starting a business, this is what we need to base it on, right? Because the only other thing that we have are projections, feasibility. I mean, obviously we have the business plan, but these should be the facts of what you have, okay? If you take a look at it, assets, liabilities. Wow. And this is on the personal side.
Have we heard that before? Assets and liabilities?
And then income verification. These forms are very similar. I've worked at 3 different banks, okay? They're almost identical, but they're so crucial that we need to understand what assets and liabilities do you have? How are you, when you're starting a business, where are you getting the money from to start the business, right? You can't just borrow it. You have to have your own personal financial statement, and you have to have proof of your assets, your liabilities. You have to be able to show this. I can't tell you how many customers will write the business information on here. This is just you personally, okay? Is there a space to put in business, how much you value your business? Yeah, of course, but when you're starting out, you're not gonna have as much information to be able to rely on from your business because you're looking at projections. Okay, maybe you have 1 year under your belt. So assets, liabilities, personal information, we need to know what kind of salary you're taking. Okay, what kind of salary are you taking from the business? Or a lot of people have maybe a business, but they actually work full-time as well. Super important. We still need your personal tax returns, all right? They're still crucial because how do we prove everything that you're putting on your personal financial statement? Super important as well. Anyone ever filled out a personal financial statement? Nice, okay. It looks scary. It isn't. Take the time. Your banker could go through this with you one by one, kind of go through the form. It isn't as scary as it looks, but it's crucial to your business because this is you. You're the skin in the game for your business.
I'd say here's a trick, if you guys plan on completing one, just to see how it pans out, start with page 2, and then all the information feeds to page 1. So starting with page 2 is actually easier.
Only if you get it electronically. It doesn't work on the printed copies. That's why I didn't say it. But yeah, I mean, look at it, understand exactly what banks are looking for. We have to have one of these with every single loan application that we take. And honestly, we should have it with every single customer that we meet with. Okay. I tried to go very brief.
No, that's okay. The idea here, though, is that when you approach the bank with a credit request, if something happens to the business, the bank is always looking at, well, how is the loan going to be repaid? Because we don't want to put you in a position where we've given you a loan and you don't have the ability to pay us back. That's not a good look for you, and it's not a good look for us. So ultimately, that's where all this comes from with your personal financial well-being. So just a couple of tidbits there. We're looking for a personal credit score around 680 or better, okay? And then from a debt to income ratio perspective, meaning the income that you have versus the debt that you have, we'd like that to be less than 35%. Just as a couple of ideas there.
I have a question.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
there ever a point where your business can stand alone as far as credit? Because like when I first opened my accounts, it was based on, I had like business credit based on my personal. Like how long would it take before we could separate that from never?
I'll be honest, it never does. You're always going to guarantee. I have customers that have been in business 40 years. We still need their personal. Yeah. Could it stand alone to get a loan? Not really. We still need the personal. 9 times out of 10, you have a personal guarantee along with your business. There are very slim occasions where maybe a bank wouldn't require a personal guarantee. 9 times out of 10, they do.
If your question is asking specifically, like, can your business maintain the debt itself? Yes. Typically, that's about 2 years, right? So on average, if we're looking at 2 years, 2 years and under, we will always count in your personal credit, because we have to. Anything over 2 years, we'll look at it, but at that point, like, we want your business to start sustaining itself, if that makes sense. Are you gonna have to still sign off as the owner to say, yep, I'm an owner and I'm a guarantor? Yes, but are we relying on you personally, specifically, to actually make the loan work after around 2.5 years? Probably not.
Does the way that you decide to incorporate your business make a difference as to how you look at whether the business is sustaining itself? So, like if it's an LLC.
What type of entity? So last week's class, yeah.
Or if it's backed into a trust or something like that.
So what happens is, what that impacts is how your taxes are accounted for. But we still go back to the original equation that they had mentioned. So we can still, on a tax return, still find all the information we need to pull it out. Tax returns are basically a gimmick for taxes, all right? So financial statements are easier for us to look at, like getting a profit and loss and a balance sheet. But it doesn't matter like how you incorporate or whether you're an LLC or how you're structured as far as what that means for any of the calculations.
Nat, she had a question right next to you.
I just wanted to ask, how do you look at the credit
It's still debt, I'm just saying. So your student loans feed into your credit score, obviously. It's still looked at as debt. I just had a veterinarian, 10-year veterinarian. She still owes, 10 years she graduated, still owes $250,000 in student loans. Right? So yes, it is still played into it because it is part of your credit score. Now it does depend if it's in deferment or not. So if it's in deferment, it's not gonna charge you the payment, but we're always gonna look at when you do start making that payment. Great question.
I think next week's, portion of next week covers business scores specifically, personal credit scores specifically, looking at reports, you know, and understanding how they factor in. So we can get in depth next week.
Just real quick, I want to make sure we got your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, maybe you've talked about this, how does a business start getting credit? Like, how do you start business credit? If you have an LLC, how does a business start getting credit?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times a business is going to start with a business credit card, but it's actually based on the credit performance of you. You know what I mean? So they're going back to the whole personal guarantee. Yeah, but that's a great question, and it's a challenge, right? But that's a great place to begin. Okay, we are about out of time.
7 minutes, yeah.
Did you want to wrap up, Natalie, or did you want to keep going? Okay.
5 C's of credit.
Okay. I'm just trying to be respectful, you know? All right. So I mentioned before when we were talking about in the introduction section, so there's a framework that we're looking at from a credit perspective. Whenever we're approached with a credit request, on the personal side of the house, we are looking at this 5C of credit framework. And by the way, this is not just an M&T Bank thing. This is everywhere. A lot of banks use this. And so starting with conditions, okay? That's one of the things we're going to look at. Why do you need the credit? What's driving the credit request? Also, what's going on in your industry? What's going on economically? Anybody know what prime rate is? If I said prime rate, do you know what that means? Yeah, ultimately it's a rate that's determined by the Fed and it impacts all of our interest rates, and that has skyrocketed. For like 10 years it was 3.25. Gone are those days because now it's like 8.25 and it may even be higher. But it could be, right? But ultimately, that's what we're talking about, these external factors that impact the conditions when you're looking to take out some credit. Moving on to capacity. Ultimately, we want to understand, do you have the capacity or the ability to repay the loan that we're going to give you? Okay? A lot of the calculations that we talked about, those are the things that we're doing in the background to determine that. We don't just get a credit request and say, I don't think this person could afford it, but this person could. You know, we're looking at all the financial statements and really trying to understand those ratios that we talked about. Capital. So the capital is going to tell us your overall strength in your company. So if the business happens to have some struggles and they're not able to repay, are you going to be able to repay? Or what other alternative sources are out there that we can lean against to be able to get that loan repaid? Character. This is going to go back to what we're talking about in terms of your financial and credit performance. So what's your history? Your credit history. How fiscally responsible are you? Do you pay all your bills on time? That kind of thing. Also, you know, being mindful of your, how should I put this, your record in the community, right? You want to be mindful of those things. Collateral, again, this is going back to if you want to, you come to the bank and you say, I want a $5 million loan. Lorena's going to tell you, great, let's do it, but we got to understand, how are we going to collateralize, or what's going to be put in place as a backstop if the business is not able to pay? So from a collateral perspective. Any thoughts or questions on 5 C's of credit? There's one more that got thrown in here, and that is your competency. this is going to be particularly important because when we tell your story, and by the way, that's what 90% of our job is, I feel like, is understanding your story. And then when you approach us with a credit request, we're going to ask you all kinds of questions to understand financially who you are, to understand your history, your education, your work history, all those things, so that when we go to our underwriting team, we can say, here's why we want to do this loan. Because this person has all these great qualities in terms of their work history, in terms of how it's relevant to the business, and how we can move it forward and get you some credit. Make sense? Okay. I think we're going to tie it up here.
All of these things on the 5 C's of credit were a big part of a class that we've already taught. What does this tie back to that you guys can tell us? Your business plan, exactly, right? So if you think back to your business plan and just kind of weaving in the pieces together, the 5 C's of credit are what most lenders use in the financial world, whether it's the SBA, whether it's us, Community First Fund, to be able to determine, assess your ability to take on debt, right? So you need 25,000, you need $100,000. With that being said, we get all of this information from your business plan. You're not an existing business. We can't go to your website. We can't Google you. We get all of that information from your business plan, right? So think about, again, when we talk about market conditions and what's happening in the industry and the market, what you tell us, we're going to Google and say, okay, well, yeah, all right, this makes sense. This person knows what they're talking about. Capacity has to do with financial statements and mostly the debt service, so that 1.2 times. That, for every dollar of debt, you have $1.20 of income, right? So we're going to do that calculation because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that you can afford to make the debt, to make the payment, and still live the lifestyle that you're living, right? But all of these other things, character, we literally Google people. So I say that because if there is, social media these days is widely out there, and if we don't, someone in an auditing capacity will literally they'll do from a Fed standpoint, they'll do some search. So sometimes we'll literally Google someone just to be like, well, let's see what pops up on them, right? In a good way, right? And a lot of times we've had some people say, yep, hey, I got a DUI when I was younger, so I haven't misdemeanor. Thanks for letting me know, right? We want to know that ahead of time, so we know that, that's not going to be a big surprise because that becomes a character issue, right? So if you're not telling us the truth and you're not upfront with certain things, that's going to be a problem later, right? So just know that because as you apply for SBA loans and a lot of other grant programs, a lot of the federal-backed loans require a lot of these questions to be answered. And so just know how this all kind of ties together and why the business plan itself is so important in what the information you give us. How many of you actually have a business loan currently? Okay, so that being said, what would be important on the back end of your business plan is the most important financial statement that Michael spoke about was the profit and loss statement, right? So the one that showed your revenues, right? So, and for you guys, it's all projections at this point, right? What am I projecting? I'm going to, well, if you're existing in business, of course, we want 3 years, whether that's 3 years historical or 3 years of projections, right? And we want to know what you're anticipating revenue-wise. We want to know what your expenses are going to be. To Lorena's point and Michael's point, the income, we're going to, I probably ask, like year 1, I probably want to see payroll 0. Year 2, I'm going to be like, why aren't you starting to pay yourself and then you're gonna have projections for this year and next year. Make sense? Okay, and you should be able to paint a story around that. Okay?
So if you started your business using your personal credit, and now you intend on expanding, how do you make that transition when now you've been responsible, and using your personal credit and keeping it down, but how do you transfer over to the business? Because now what happens is that when you look at, let's look at my credit, you're saying, oh, well, we have this expense, but I've been using that credit to run this business.
Yeah, so ideally you pay that off, right? So at some point you're gonna the question was, if you started your business and maybe you got a personal credit card, but you've been using that personal credit card to fund your business operations, how do you make that transition, right? At some point you are going to have to transition to getting either a business credit card and paying that off, or getting a standard business, like a startup loan, an SBA loan. We love SBA loans. The SBA is a great program, and I'm sure they get into it next week. Jason, do you get into SBA next week? Okay. The SBA back loans financial institutions love, mostly because it takes out risk for us, right? So it allows us to be able to do some upfront lending where maybe not all of the stuff in the chart was not everything was an A+, but it gives us the opportunity to say we've got a backing by the Fed to take this risk. And a lot of that is for startup businesses. So that is a great opportunity for you to go out there and say, all right, I've been in business, I've got a plan, let me apply for a loan and pay myself off personally. And now you let your business churn its own financials. Does that make sense?
A quick comment to that. I would say that's the receipts, receipts, receipts. So a lot of times you're going to be doing your own thing, your own money to invest in the business initially, right? Keep your receipts because you may have an opportunity in the next couple of years to refinance that with a business loan, and now it's in the business name, and you can track all of that. Make sense?
Okay. All right, that's a lot of information today.
So much information.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael and Lorena. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, you guys. Nice to meet you.